She told me to wear the navy jacket because it doesn't make you look like someone who gave up. That was her exact phrasing. I should have seen it then, the way she glanced at her phone right after saying it, not even waiting for me to laugh, flinch, or respond. I stared at the jacket for a solid minute, thinking about how much of my life was made up of small humiliations I pretended not to notice. I put it on anyway. The dinner was at this upscale place on 4th Street, low lighting, waiters with accents you couldn't quite place, and prices that didn't have decimals. She walked a few steps ahead of me when we arrived. She always did that at work events, like she was parting from me before anyone could attach us together. Her name is Marin. My wife for 9 years, partner for 12. Somewhere between comfortably boring and mutually functional, if you asked either of us a year ago. She used to sing when she cooked, lean into me when we walked, sleep with her face buried in my chest. Now she ordered food with military precision and smiled just a little too brightly for people who weren't me. The dinner table was long. A few VPs from the firm were there. Nolan, her boss, sat across from her. Marin didn't just laugh at his jokes. She preloaded them, eyes wide, anticipating the punchlines before they landed. She touched her necklace when she spoke, something she used to do when she was nervous. I knew these details. I'd memorized them. But clearly, I wasn't supposed to exist in that world. At least, not as anything more than the accessory husband. And then came the sentence. Nolan asked her how she managed to organize 2 back-to-back client expos without losing her mind. That's when she turned to the table, not me, raised her glass, and said, in a tone polished with just the right amount of recklessness, "Because I don't go home to chaos. I go home to silence." The table laughed. Someone whistled. Another said, "Damn, that's brutal." I just sat there, staring at my fork. That sentence broke something clean inside me, because I realized in that moment, she hadn't been coming home to me for a long time, and I didn't walk out in anger. I walked out because I felt like a guest at a table set for someone else's life. I left without my jacket, without my keys, without even checking if she noticed. Spoiler, she didn't. But the story doesn't end there. Because 2 days later, someone sent me a package that made everything make sense and ripped apart the rest of what I thought I still had. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was crying, or shaking, or pacing the floor like in some dramatic movie scene. No, it was worse than that. I just lay there, motionless, still wearing the shirt from dinner, still smelling the cologne I only ever used for rare occasions. I stared at the ceiling and tried to recall the last time I felt like I belonged in my own life, my own marriage, my own home. I couldn't. Marin didn't come home. I didn't expect her to. At 2:07 a.m., I heard the buzz of a car outside, followed by the faint sound of heels on the driveway, but the front door never opened. She knew I had a key to the deadbolt. She must have slept elsewhere. Maybe she thought I would have locked her out in some fit of petty revenge. But I hadn't even touched the lock. The next morning, I walked around the house like a guest in a showroom. I noticed how clean everything looked, too clean. Our fridge had nothing but flavored water and pre-made protein bowls. Her closet was filled with conference lanyards and a carry-on bag I'd never seen before. On our bathroom counter, her perfume, the one I bought her in Chicago, was missing. Like it had moved on, too. Around noon, I decided to clear my head. I took my old bike out of the garage, the one I hadn't touched in 2 years, and rode aimlessly toward the outskirts of town, where the pavement thinned out and gave way to silence. It was there, outside an abandoned train station, that my phone buzzed. A blocked number. I nearly ignored it, but I answered. A man's voice, calm and direct. "Ellis, you don't know me, but I know about your wife. You should check your mailbox when you get home." I froze. Who is this? Click. No answer. I biked home faster than I've moved in years. The mailbox was empty until I looked closer. Tucked behind a cluster of realtor ads and coupon books was a thin, brown envelope. No return address. Just my name, typed. Not handwritten, typed. Like someone had made sure to leave no trace. I took it inside and sat at the kitchen table where we used to play cards on Sunday mornings. I opened it carefully, slowly. Inside was a stack of photographs, printed on glossy paper. Not digital, not screenshots. These were high quality, purposeful, almost surgical. And what they showed made my mouth go dry. Marin, my wife. In hotel lobbies. In elevators. In tight, intimate shots of her standing far too close to Nolan. At one point, she was in his car, a hand resting on his thigh. In another, they were outside a restaurant, his hand in her hair. There was a timestamp on every photo. The oldest one was from 7 months ago. The most recent? Just 4 nights before the business dinner. The worst part wasn't the images. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the fact that she looked happier in those candid, blurry moments with him than I'd seen her in years. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just placed the photos on the counter, one by one, like evidence in a trial where I already knew the verdict. Then I heard the sound of keys turning in the front door. Maren was home, and I was still sitting there, waiting, not with rage, not with confrontation, but with the one question I never thought I'd have to ask the woman I gave my life to. Why did you bother coming back? She walked in like nothing happened. Hair still styled from the night before, a takeaway coffee in her hand, sunglasses still on though it was overcast outside. She paused when she saw me sitting at the kitchen table, the photos neatly lined up in front of me like silent witnesses. Her eyes flicked down, just for a second. Then she placed the coffee on the counter like she hadn't seen them at all. You're home, she said, casual. Dry. No panic. No guilt. Where were you last night? I asked. She pulled her sunglasses off slowly, the way someone does when they're preparing to lie but haven't decided how big yet. I stayed at Lacey's. I thought you needed space. Lacey lives in Columbus now, I said flatly. You forgot that? She froze. I watched her scramble in her head. Her mouth opened slightly, closed again, then finally settled into a practiced, indifferent smirk. I didn't come here to fight, Ellis. No, I said. You came back to a place you abandoned long before last night. She moved toward the living room, trying to walk past the photos. But something made her stop. She finally looked. Really looked. Picked one up, the one where Nolan had his hand in her hair, and studied it like it was a piece of mail addressed to someone else. Who gave you these? I didn't answer. She put the photo down more carefully than I expected, then leaned on the counter. You had someone follow me? No. Someone else did that for me. I just picked up the mail. Her silence said more than anything. She didn't deny it. Didn't cry. Didn't drop to her knees and apologize like some dramatic movie scene. Instead, she picked up her coffee again and took a long, slow sip. I suppose it was going to come out eventually, she said. That sentence alone nearly knocked the wind out of me. The casualness of it. The flat, emotionless tone. Like she was talking about a billing error or a scratched car door. Not our marriage. I stood up. Not because I was angry, but because I suddenly realized I didn't want to be sitting anymore. Didn't want to feel smaller than her, weaker, buried beneath her indifference. So why? I asked. Just, why? Was I not enough? Was it boredom? Loneliness? Or did you just enjoy lying? She rolled her eyes. God, Ellis. You always ask questions like you're hoping the answer will fix something. Like there's a version of this where I explain it, and you go, oh, okay, that makes sense now. There's not. People grow. People change. Sometimes love doesn't stick. Love doesn't cheat, I said, louder than I meant to. Love doesn't sneak around in hotels and lie about best friends and come home to a man you clearly don't respect anymore. Respect. She laughed, not with humor, but with contempt. I spent years respecting you, Ellis. Respecting your routine, your caution, your slow, careful way of living like you were afraid the world might collapse if you raised your voice. You never took risks. You never surprised me. You were safe. And you didn't want safe? No. I wanted real. I wanted exciting. I wanted to feel something again. Nolan made me feel alive, I interrupted. That's the cliche, right? He made you feel alive. She didn't respond. Because she didn't need to. That silence confirmed it. I nodded. Walked over to the fridge, tore off the last post-it note I'd left her, a dumb little quote from an old sitcom we used to watch, and crumpled it in my hand. I think you should go, I said. And she did. No screaming. No final words. Just the sound of her heels on the tile, the door shutting behind her, and then silence. The same silence she once mocked in front of a table full of strangers. Only now, she had no idea what that silence was going to cost her. Because I hadn't shown her the last photo in the envelope. The one that could end more than just our marriage. The last photo in the envelope wasn't like the others. It wasn't blurry or taken from behind a car window. It was sharp, close up, and intimate in the kind of way that made my skin crawl. It was taken in a hotel room. Not a lobby. Not a hallway. A room. Maren was sitting at the edge of a king-sized bed, legs crossed, wine glass in hand, with Nolan standing behind her in a partially unbuttoned shirt, both of them smirking toward the camera like they were in on some joke the rest of the world wasn't invited to. On the bedside table sat an open folder, hotel stationery, and what looked like printed contracts, company logos visible even in the photo's shadows. But what hit me hardest wasn't what they were doing. It was what she was wearing. It was a silk robe I bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. A deep burgundy one she said made her feel like a movie star. I hadn't seen her wear it in over a year. She'd told me it was packed away during our last closet purge. But there it was, the one piece of clothing I'd ever splurged on, draped across her like a mockery. That's when something snapped inside me. Not in a violent way. Not in the way movies show when a man finally loses it. No, this was something quieter. Colder. A kind of emotional clarity that's almost surgical. I suddenly saw everything for what it really was, not a marriage, not a love story, but a long-running performance in which I was cast as the background. For years, I'd been padding her world. Making sure the groceries were stocked, the bills were paid, the car had gas, and her coffee was hot every morning. I was the scaffolding she climbed to build a better view of her own life. And now I was just obsolete. I picked up the photo and slid it into an old envelope. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I couldn't throw it away. Not yet. That night, I didn't hear from her. Not a text. Not a call. Nothing. And for the first time in years, I didn't wait up. I didn't wonder where she was. I didn't stare at the door, hoping it would open and she'd say the right thing. I just sat in the living room, stared out at the empty street, and realized something awful. She wasn't the only liar in our marriage. I had lied to myself for years. Told myself she was just tired. That things would improve. That work stress would ease up. That the distance between us was temporary. That the woman who used to laugh at my stupid jokes was still in there somewhere, waiting to be pulled back to the surface. But she wasn't. That version of her didn't exist anymore. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. My boss, Grant, didn't question it. Just said to take my time. I appreciated that. It gave me space to sit with the reality of what was unfolding. I spent the rest of the day cleaning out my car, deleting our Spotify playlists, taking down framed photos from the hallway wall one by one. Around noon, a text finally came through from Marin. "We need to talk. Can I come by after work?" I didn't respond. Instead, I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in almost a decade, Dean Forrester, my college roommate. He now worked in digital security and information forensics. The kind of guy who once helped track down a professor's stolen laptop using just metadata from a single email. I asked him one simple question. "Can you find out who took these pictures?" He replied 2 minutes later, "Send them. All of them. Now." And just like that, the game changed. Because if someone had been following her for months, someone with access to hotel rooms and boardroom meetings, then this wasn't just about cheating. It was about something deeper, something planned. And I had no idea just how far it went. But I was about to find out. Dean called me back 3 hours later. Not a text. Not an email. A call. That alone told me it was serious. "Ellis," he said, skipping any greeting, "you need to come see this for yourself." I drove 2.5 hours to his office in Columbus without stopping. The entire ride, my mind was running in circles, revisiting every weird moment from the last year. All the times Marin had her phone turned over at dinner. All the canceled date nights. The hotel shampoo bottles that weren't from our bathroom. The text she typed with a sudden smile, then quickly deleted. I had made excuses for all of it. Now it was like a mosaic coming together, one I didn't want to see. Dean met me outside his building, a small gray structure tucked behind a row of tech startups. He didn't waste time. We went straight into his office, and he pulled up a series of images on a widescreen monitor. My photos. But enhanced. I ran metadata extractions on every image, he said. Some of these were taken with a Samsung S23. Some were from a Nikon DSLR. But the GPS data, that's the part you need to see. He clicked open a map with a series of location pins. Whoever took these was close. Very close. Same city. Some of these shots were taken from inside the same buildings Marin visited, not just nearby, but with access to high floors, secured elevators. And 3 of them? They were sent from a secure server hosted overseas. Someone wanted these to be seen, but not traced easily. He paused, then turned to me. "Ellis, you're not the only one they've been watching." "What do you mean?" He opened another folder. This one hit harder than I was ready for. Pictures of me. At my office. At the gas station. Grabbing takeout. One of me inside the house, visible through the living room window. "You're being surveilled." I sat there, stunned. My brain couldn't catch up with the weight of that sentence. "Who would do that?" I asked. "Why?" Dean didn't answer right away. Instead, he opened a final image. It was from 3 months ago. It showed Marin in a parking lot, standing next to a man who wasn't Nolan. I recognized him. Not right away, but then I did. His name was Hayden Marks. He was Marin's ex. The one she said was a mistake from college. The one who supposedly moved to Florida years ago. He wasn't in Florida. He was right here. Dean leaned forward. Ellis, what if I told you this wasn't about Nolan? What if Nolan's just the front, the visible part of something more complex? What if Marin's been seeing more than one man? What if this was never about a single affair, but something bigger, manipulation, even fraud? I was shaking. You're saying this could be a setup? I'm saying, he replied. Someone went to a lot of trouble to keep you in the dark, while making sure the truth hit you just hard enough to break you, but not enough to make you act. I left his office with more questions than answers. Drove home with my hands trembling on the wheel. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Marin's car already parked out front. She was waiting on the porch, calm, like nothing had changed. I didn't go to her. I went inside and walked straight to my office. Locked the door. Took the photos, scanned every one of them into a file marked "Do Not Delete," and sent a copy to Dean. And then I opened the drawer where I kept the old spiral notebook from our first year of marriage, the one where we wrote each other notes every Sunday. On the first page, her handwriting read, "Let's never lie to each other, even if it hurts." I laughed, out loud, alone, because if she'd meant that, I wouldn't be here staring down a spiral of betrayal, manipulation, and secrets deeper than any marriage should have to hold. Then I heard a knock on the door. Marin's voice was soft through the wood. Ellis, can we talk? I didn't move. Not yet, because what I was about to say to her next would either end everything or finally show me just how much of my life had been a lie. I opened the door, not because I was ready, but because sitting in that room any longer felt like being buried alive. Marin stood in the hallway, arms folded, face unreadable. She didn't look guilty. She didn't even look nervous. That bothered me more than anything. I assume you've seen the photos, she said. No apology? I asked. No hesitation. She sighed like she was tired of the entire situation, as if her betrayal was just another task on her to-do list that hadn't gone the way she planned. Ellis, we can either have a productive conversation or turn this into something ugly. I'm not here to fight. Then why are you here? She stepped inside, brushing past me without permission. She didn't even pause to look at the photos now sitting on the desk. Because I think we both need to stop pretending this was a happy marriage. You weren't blind, you just didn't want to see it. You mean the affair? I said. Or the second one? Or are there more I haven't found yet? She turned to me, her jaw tight. You were emotionally absent for years. Always polite, always predictable. I needed more. Nolan gave me more. Hayden gave me. Hayden. I cut her off. So that was him. She hesitated for a split second. Enough to confirm everything. I stepped back, suddenly feeling like I couldn't breathe in the same room as her. You lied to me. You told me he moved to Florida. He came back into my life through work, she said, her tone defensive now. It wasn't planned. Nothing about this feels unplanned, I replied. She walked over to the kitchen counter, looking around like she was seeing our home for the first time. Ellis, I didn't come here to destroy you. I came here because I thought we could end this in a way that didn't leave both of us shattered. You're too late for that. There was silence. A long one. Then she said it, the line that cemented everything. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I want a clean split. No drama. I stared at her. So this was all just you working toward the exit? She nodded, slowly. I've moved on, Ellis. You should too. She left a manila folder on the kitchen table, divorce paperwork. Clean. Cold. Like her. Then she turned, walked out, and shut the door without looking back. I didn't follow. I stood there for a long time, not even touching the folder. My phone buzzed again, a message from Dean. We need to talk. The surveillance wasn't just about you. Something bigger's going on. You were targeted. Targeted? That word echoed in my head. Because now this wasn't just about my wife's betrayal. Someone had planned this, and I was the fool who walked right into it. I called Dean right away. He picked up on the first ring. Ellis, listen carefully. That man Hayden? He's not just some ex. He's connected to a company under federal investigation. Financial misconduct, data theft, corporate espionage. His name came up on 2 internal watch lists I have access to. Your wife, she's in deeper than you know. I sat down, feeling like the ground had just tilted under me. Are you saying Marin's involved in something criminal? I'm saying she's either being used or she's a part of it, Dean said. And if she dragged you into it, even unknowingly, they could try to pin something on you. That thought hit harder than anything she had done. Because for all the emotional pain, I never once imagined she'd put me in danger. But maybe I never knew her at all. Dean offered to loop in someone he trusted, an ex-DOJ analyst now working private. I agreed. He said I'd hear from them soon. I hung up and stared at the divorce papers still lying on my table. They looked less like closure now and more like bait. Then my doorbell rang. For a second, I didn't move. But curiosity got the better of me. When I opened it, there was no one there, just a small black USB drive on the welcome mat, taped to a blank card. No message. No name. I plugged it into my laptop without connecting to the internet, just like Dean had taught me years ago when we were broke college kids pulling pranks on each other with viruses. Inside the drive was a single video file, timestamped from just 2 weeks ago. The footage was from inside a hotel room. Hidden camera. Wide angle. It showed Marin and Hayden talking, not kissing, not touching. Talking. But what she said chilled me to my core. He still doesn't suspect anything. Ellis always sees the best in people. I give it 2 more weeks and he'll sign everything. Then we move forward. Hayden replied, good. Once the account is split, he won't even notice the missing funds until it's too late. She nodded. He's not a threat. He's just harmless. The video ended. That word, harmless, hit harder than any insult ever could. She wasn't just cheating. She was using me. I wasn't just her husband. I was a target. And now, I had proof. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I didn't collapse under the weight of it all like I might have a year ago. Instead, I smiled. Not because I was okay. Not because it didn't hurt. But because, for the first time in years, I finally saw the truth without making excuses for it. And the truth had given me power, quiet, undeniable power. The next morning, I met with Dean and his contact, a woman named Claire who used to work with the Department of Justice. She reviewed the footage, the documents, even the photos. She didn't say much at first. Then she looked up at me and said, "You've got everything you need to protect yourself and ruin them, if that's what you want." But I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. We put together a full report. Claire helped me contact the proper financial institutions and preemptively freeze any joint accounts Marin might try to access. The house, which had been solely in my name since we refinanced 3 years ago, was safe. And the company I worked for? Dean made sure they knew I had nothing to do with the circles Hayden and Marin were running in. 3 days later, I sent Marin a message. Not emotional. Not dramatic. Just a statement. Your plan failed. I saw everything. And I'm done. She didn't reply. Instead, her lawyer reached out. Suddenly, she didn't want a clean split anymore. She wanted to negotiate. But it was too late for that. With the evidence I had, she couldn't touch a cent that wasn't hers. No spousal support. No claim to assets. Nothing. Just silence. I signed the papers. Quickly. Calmly. And when it was done, I didn't look back. Weeks passed. Then a month. And something strange happened. I started laughing again. Not at jokes. Just randomly, when I realized I no longer had to question everything. I could breathe again. I slept through the night. I picked up an old hobby, woodworking, and turned the guest room into a small workshop. I even said yes when the woman from the coffee shop down the street asked me to join her for a poetry night at the library. It wasn't about falling in love again. It wasn't even about being with someone. It was about remembering that I existed outside of the damage Marin caused. One evening, I sat on the back porch with a cup of tea, watching the sun drop behind the trees, and I felt something I hadn't in years, stillness. Not silence. Not numbness. Stillness. The kind that comes when you've walked through fire and come out lighter. This whole thing started with one sentence she said at a dinner. But it ended with one I whispered to myself months later, sitting on that porch, finally free. You were never harmless. You were just kind. And now you're stronger than ever. And I believed it.